All right, so let's see. 1 second. All right, so Dr. Francis, tell me your full name and your title.
I'm Eric Francis. I'm a primary care physician. Work here in New Braunfels with the Baptist Health Network. And I've been practicing in New Braunfels for about 6 or 7 years now.
All right, so tell me, Dr. Francis, this weekend is the Super Bowl, and how would you say this Super Bowl Sunday is different from any other Super Bowls that we've ever had in the history of?
Yeah, this is a real strange Super Bowl Sunday because this is one of the first times we've ever had um, somebody named Tom Brady play in the Super Bowl. So, real strange event. I think we'll probably all get through it, but I guess you're probably really wanting to know just Super Bowl in relationship with the pandemic. So, strange times. We're in a pandemic. Uh, and then what's a little bit concerning about this Super Bowl is we know that COVID-19 has a pattern regarding its spread. Every time people gather, there seems to be a spike. Uh, and we've seen that throughout this year. Memorial Day, spike. 4th of July, spike. And we're seeing that same type of pattern when we went through Thanksgiving and Christmas. What makes me a little bit more concerned about this spike is the amount of hospitalization, the amount of community spread is higher now than what we were back in Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving went up. We kind of expected that. Comes down a little bit. Christmas comes up. And we're just starting to see a trend down, but now we have this major American holiday and we're already up here. And if people start gathering together, which they probably will, we're going to take it from here and we're going to go to another level when we're just starting to see some potential benefits of getting away from Christmas and having some of the effects of the vaccine.
So now, would you say that, especially with, I think, events like Super Bowl, when people do end up gathering, would you say that the trend is kind of toward uh, people drinking alcohol, and maybe would that also affect their judgment as far as social distancing and wearing masks? Does that kind of affect that and make it worse?
Yes, we all know that alcohol makes people look prettier and makes people talk a little bit louder, give a little bit more hugs. And so when you combine that with what's going on with the pandemic, alcohol is unfortunately an extra igniter of potential spread of COVID 19. One of the things I think we need to remember as far as the spread of COVID 19 is it gets spread through aerosolization. And when I try to describe it to kids or to my family, when I think about aerosolization, I think about blowing bubbles. And when we blow bubbles, you can see that little film that goes off, and then kids go and they jump on them and they catch them. Whenever we talk or whenever we breathe, we're going to be aerosolizing things. Real easy to see that if you put a mirror up to your mouth and you breathe, you can see the droplets that accumulate. What happens is the louder our voices are, the more we make those little tiny aerosolized bubbles. And then that goes around the room. And one of the things that we kind of experience with alcohol is people typically get a little bit louder. And every time you have alcohol, plus you see a picture of Tom Brady, it probably is going to make you want to yell. And so this is a perfect combination, unfortunately, for the virus to spread to other people.
And now, in particular, would you say that we have to be more cautious because there are now these variants that um, have been reported, and you know they they could be here.
Yeah,
We
so
don't know yet. Tell me about that.
so I think the first thing you want to think about is what is a variant. An easy way to view that is to think about your kids. I've got three variants at home. Each one of them has a little bit different characterization or characteristics. So every time an organism reproduces, we're going to have a little bit of a change in what that next generation of organisms looks like. And unfortunately, that's what's been happening with coronavirus, and we expected this. So when the variants that you will start to see out there, or you hear in the news, there's a Brazilian variant, there is a South African variant, there's a British variant, and each one of these has a little bit different characteristics compared to the coronaviruses that we had seen, or the coronavirus that we had seen earlier in the spring. One of the concerning things about at least two of the new variants, the British variant, typically we're starting to see a trend that may be about 50% more contagious compared to the variants that are going on right now. The other part of that is there is a trend, and again, we have to have a little bit of asterisk and a little bit of humility of saying exactly what will happen, but it does seem to be a little bit more deadly, and we're starting to see that in the community. The other thing that we're seeing, say with the South African variant, is there may be a little bit less efficacy of the vaccine compared to the prior COVID 19 variants. So, with both of these going on, it puts just one extra little twist compared to maybe what we were seeing back in Thanksgiving.
So, what would you recommend people might think about doing, celebrating in an alternative way? I mean, do you have any advice or ideas maybe for how people can celebrate this year in a very safe way, but still have fun?
Yeah, well, I think I heard that, how can people celebrate Super Bowl differently? I've heard Discovery Channel is combining Shark Week with their puppies episode, and so that's going to be very interesting. You may not have as many people want to come over if you watch the Shark Week, but on a practical level, how do we do things differently with this Super Bowl? I would really like people to know that we are so close to being able to turn this ship around. We have vaccines now. We know more about the virus. We are starting to see a trend going down, and it is not. We need to recognize that it is not easy to not be together during things like holidays and the Super Bowl. So this is a sacrifice. I've never had to watch the Super Bowl by myself with my wife. It's really going to be a challenge for me. But I think that's what we really want to try to be as a community, is up to the challenge of saying we are getting so close to turning this thing around. Um, and I think we also have to have a little bit of practicality when we give advice. We know that the best thing is to not gather in groups. That's not going to happen with everybody. And so then, if you know you're not going to be one of those people who don't, who may still gather, can you do it in a different or a safer way? Uh, and that may be, hey, we've got great weather here in San Antonio. Can we have smaller groups, and maybe you bring the TV outside? You can social distance there. We know that being outdoors dramatically reduces the spread of COVID-19. Can we put our parents or people who are a little bit older? Can we spread them out just even a little bit more? When you think about having food, perhaps instead of having one big uh, serving spoon that everybody's grabbing that same serving spoon, perhaps everybody brings their own little favorite plastic spoon and serves themselves. So I think people in this area can be creative about it. Again, the best thing to do is going to be to try to avoid gathering in groups. If you know you're going to not do that, and then it's trying to be as safe as possible, and as much as you can try to have fewer people. And if you could do it outside, that would be even better.
That sounds like very good advice. Um, is there anything else that you want to add or mention that we didn't talk about here that you think is very important that people know and remember?
Yeah, I think it's everything that we've been talking about for these past 9 months. There's been a little bit of a muddled message that has been gotten through as far as things like masks, but we really know that masks do make a difference when we are around people. Most of the spread typically occurs when we are close together, and so having a mask is one of those ways where we can prevent or decrease the amount of spread. It still will happen that way, but it is a much safer way to be around people as if we can socially distance greater than 6 feet. We can have our masks on, and then as few as people as possible being in groups, the better. One of the things that we want to be aware of is with the Super Bowl, it's at this time in our community, you know, you'd really have to be a jerk to go to a Super Bowl party with a fever or a cold. So unless you're a New England Patriots fan, you're very unlikely to be going to a Super Bowl party with having a fever. But the problem with how COVID-19 is spreading is a lot of this spread happens before people have symptoms. So probably the highest rate of transmission of the virus occurs to about occurs about zero point 0.7 days prior to you having symptoms. So most of us aren't going to be jerks and go into the party with symptoms. But if we have no symptoms, but we have the infection, that's actually when we may have some of the biggest spread. And so I want people to remember that even though you are not having symptoms, there is a possibility that if you have COVID, that's going to actually be the biggest time where you could have spread.
That's really important. A really good point to remember because I don't think people think about that part. They don't realize they could be carrying the infection and not even know it. They could
Absolutely.
be spreading it. So this was really, really good. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, sure.
That was. So who are you rooting for?
This is the first time that I have, as much as I don't like Tom Brady, it was really because I didn't like New England Patriots, and so it's been kind of a strange shift because he's close to my age, and I said, "Wow, what a accomplishment to go from the Patriots to the to a Tampa Bay and be able to potentially win the Super Bowl." I think that's a pretty great story. So I think this is the first time in my life I've actually gone for Tom Brady. I think it's a fun story. I like the Chiefs too.
Yeah.
Um, so it's not going to be the end of the world, but